Good morning, everyone. My name is Kevin Lagore. I am the director. I'm sorry, I've been doing, we'll talk about that in a minute. My name is Kevin Lagore. I'm the product specialist for Skywatcher here in North America, and welcome to the What's Up webcast. We do this every Friday right here at the Skywatcher USA YouTube channel at 10 a.m. Pacific. Every week's a different episode. We cover a different topic from what's up in the nighttime sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks that you can use for you're observing in astrophotography. And of course, the last Friday of each month, we do a special guest. So if you've joined us here before, welcome back. Happy Friday. Hope your week's been good. If you're joining us for the first time, we're happy to have you here and hopefully, have you back as a regular. So thanks for being here. I messed up a little bit earlier. I've been doing the Grand Canyon Virtual Star Party the last few nights as a presenter, and I've been talking about my outreach program. I'm the director of that, so it's been a lot of webcasts this weekend or this week. So anyway, we'll talk about that later. This week we're talking gear, and of course, what kind of equipment we're talking about is the EvoStar line. And we have done an episode on these before, but there's some new hardware that we actually want to talk about and maybe kind of go over the series again, um, because refractors are just an awesome set of equipment. So the EvoStar series is our ED doublet line of refractors. They are all apochromatic, and they sit below our Esprits. Our Esprits are our flagship triplet series, where the EvoStars are the doublets, and we can talk about that in detail as the presentation goes a little bit further. Let me get through. There we go. So like I said, the EvoStar series is an ED doublet objective. These are well color corrected. They do provide that APO performance without that massive price tag that you'd probably see with a triplet. They are lighter weight than a triplet because you don't need as large and heavy of a cell to maintain collimation on the lens elements. Being that it is a doublet means there's only two pieces of glass in the objective lens rather than three. So they tend to be lighter weight than some of their heavier cousins. Everything on our systems are metal, metal tubes, machine focusers, all that quality stuff that you want on a nice APO refractor. Now, because they are ED doublets, they are a little bit more affordable and budget friendly in comparison to a triplet as well. So you could probably see that from the price tags online if you want to take a look at those. And we actually make them in multiple sizes. We have a 50, 72, 80, 100, 120, and two versions of the 150. And we'll break all that down in this episode so you can take a closer look at in detail of each of the models in the series. Now let's talk about the design really quick. Like I said, these are ED doublets. So they use two pieces of glass in their objective lens. You have the front element and then the rear ED element. And then that helps color correct and gets rid of any of that color fringing that you might see around bright objects and stars. So the EvoStar series does a very nice job at making sure that is correct. And we use a synthetic fluorite rear element on the back of these objectives. So that is where the ED one is. Randy, yes, these have different names across the world. Some of them have been known about Black Diamond, is what they've been referred to. Now they all say EvoStar on the side of them, so even if they haven't updated the name on the local distributor's website, they all say EvoStar on the side of the telescope. No matter what you get, they are going to be screen printed on the side of the tube there. So they're EvoStars. But yeah, anything that's that doublet, it's the same design, it's the same telescope. It's just they might not have updated the page names on that. So the nice thing about having a two-element design over a three-element is that that's less glass that the light has to go through. You have less scatter of light. You get a little bit more contrast out of the view. Now, some people might take that information and run with it, but it's very minor between the two as far as contrast goes. Two very well built refractors put next to each other, you'd probably have a hard time noticing the difference. We have had an EvoStar 150 right next to an Esprit 150, same magnification on, I think we were looking at Saturn at the time. That's actually a really interesting experiment, is to get two equal aperture telescopes and compare them with the same magnification on a different target. You can learn a lot about the individual optical systems at that point. But I would say that EvoStars produce a visual image that's probably about 95% that of an Esprit refractor visually. So for a visual instrument, they're very close to their triplet counterparts. Like I said earlier, because these are doublets, they are a lot lighter weight. For example, like the Esprit 120 is 22 pounds, where an EvoStar 120 is 14, and that's decked out with all of its accessories. So if you want a really nice apo refractor, and maybe you don't have a large mount, or maybe you don't have the funds to maybe obtain a large mount, the doublets can be a lot more forgiving on smaller mounts. So you still can have that apo in your lineup of equipment, but you don't have to go break the bank to get a larger mount to handle the bigger mass of a larger refractor. Now, one thing that you have to look at when you have an ED doublet is, because they are not a triplet, they don't have that third element of glass in the objective to help correct for color correction. Now, because of that, you generally have to have a longer focal length matched with the ED elements to give you that color correction, because longer focal length helps all the colors focus equally. So if you had like a 6-inch f15 achromat, it would probably be pretty well corrected for color, but then the tube is just huge. So an ED doublet reduces that, the need for a really long focal length, by putting an ED element into the objective. Helps that color correction, but you still need to have a slightly longer focal length. Most 80 triplets are somewhere between f5 and f6, where our 80 EvoStar is f7.5. So that's just an example right there. These are really designed to be visual APOs, but they can be used photographically. They do quite well photographically. But if you're looking to get into astrophotography and you're limited on budget, an ED doublet can be an excellent choice at starting imaging, because you don't have to worry about collimation. They're generally smaller. Like I said earlier, they're lighter on the mount, but they still give you that real pinpoint view and image that you're looking for when using a refractor. And, like I said, they could be used effectively for imaging. So now, like I said earlier, we make several sizes of these. We're going to start with the 72. I know we make the EvoStar 50. The Evo Guide 50. This is our little 50 millimeter ED guide scope. I'm not going to be talking really a lot about this in the presentation today, because we're doing an entire episode on it next month. So if you really want to know the ins and outs of the 50 Evo Guide, this is the new version that's got the Vixen plate on the bottom of it. This is what we call the 50DX. These are actually shipping right now as of this recording. I think we even have them in stock. So I know things are a little weird right now for inventory, but if you're looking for one of these are available right now. But we're going to be talking about this and what it can do and all its accessories next month in a completely dedicated episode to the Evo Guide 50. So, but I just wanted to let you guys know that that's kind of what we're looking at today. So starting with the EvoStar series, we have the 72 ED. Now, the 72 has been shipping for a couple years now. It's a 72 millimeter doublet. It has an f5.8 or 420 millimeter focal length, which is actually quite good. It's a very compact refractor. So if you're looking for something that's lightweight, and maybe works on a Star Adventure or an AZ-GTI, or you're looking for, they are a really great grab and go telescope as well. So they're fairly small. They do fit and carry on as well. If you're looking for something um, travel with. Real quick, I'm getting a message right now from our people behind the scenes. Just to let you guys know, stock on these has been going really quickly. So these are in stock if you're looking for 50s. They are in stock right now. But supplies are going really quickly, so they're only around while supplies last until our next shipment comes in. But things are going quick, so if you're looking for a 50, now would be the time to take a look at that. So just heads up on that. All right, so back to the 72. The 72 actually has a dual speed 2-inch Crayford focuser, so you get that real nice, precise focusing on there. It's 4.3 pounds, so it's pretty lightweight. Like I said, it fits on a lot of our smaller mounts, like Star Adventures. And it does include a couple different accessories. You have the mounting rings, the V-style dovetail plate, and a travel case. These do not come with a finder or a diagonal or eyepieces. Normally, if you're spending $400 or $500 on a 72 millimeter APO, we assume you probably are going to have those accessories laying around. If not, you can kind of customize it to your needs. There's plenty of accessories on the market from various manufacturers that you can use on these if you're looking for those accessories on the 72. But the 72 is a bare bones refractor when you get it, but it comes with everything you need to at least mount it, and then you can put whatever optical accessories you want on the back for viewing and, of course, astrophotography. And speaking of that, one of the reasons that we decided to do, I don't think I have this, I should have grabbed it, I don't have it, dang it. One of the reasons we decided to do this episode again is because we've added a couple accessories that really make some of the Evo Stars a lot easier to use. Now, we actually have a dedicated reducer for the 72 ED. It's a 0.85x reducer, and it does include the mounting ring. The mounting ring comes in the box with the reducer. It allows you to thread it and adapt it right to the back of the draw tube. The other models, you would have needed another adapter to do so, but the 72 ED reducer, which is matched for that optical system, includes the machined metal adapter to adapt that right out of the box, so you don't need anything else. Those have been shipping for a little bit now. Of course, we still have the reducer adapter for the 72. This is a rotator, and you can also put a 2-inch filter inside of the cavity in there. So this actually mounts in front of the reducer. It does the same thing as this ring right here does, except you can put a filter inside of this cavity right here, and then it also has the rotator, so you can actually frame up your object easier now with the 72 ED. So that's also available for the 72. And then if you're looking for just a nice little mount, the Star Adventure Pro Pack works really well with that. If you just need some tracking, if you like yesterday's eclipse, if you wanted to go out and shoot an eclipse, or you want to take it camping or something like that, a Star Adventure with a 72 is an awesome pairing. I mean, that would probably weigh, with a tripod, like 15 pounds altogether. So it'd be pretty lightweight once you have all that together. And if you want Go to, the AZ GTI works really well with that as well. Again, a perfect little grab and go system right there. Now stepping up to the bigger one, the 80 ED, which has been around for a couple decades now. This is probably one of the most respected little telescopes on the market. It is an 80 millimeter ED doublet. It's f7.5, so 600 millimeter focal length, which is a really nice focal length to work with. It's not super wide like the 72 and some of these smaller APO refractors on the market, but it's long enough to where you put a small high power eyepiece on this that you can start seeing detail on the planets. But at 600 millimeter, it's still wide enough to get a nice chunk of the sky as well, with both large camera sensors and low power eyepieces. So it's a nice mix. It does have the 2-inch dual speed Crayford focuser, so you can get that real precise focus. It's a bit heavier because it is bigger. It's 7.3 pounds. And this one includes all the major accessories you're going to need. You have the mounting rings, the V-style dovetail plate, travel case, a 8x50 right angle finder, 2-inch dielectric diagonal, and a 25 and 5mm eyepieces are included. So this one is equipped out of the box, pretty much ready to go for viewing. You don't really need anything else unless you want to add some eyepieces. If you're looking to do like solar observing with like a H-alpha filter, like a Daystar Quark or something like that, that's an awesome little addition to a telescope like this. It works really well. These little 80mm refractors are excellent for solar observing with the right filters. They're just an all-around nice little scope to use because you're getting a bit more aperture on there, and things really are at that point. You're really starting to get a lot more dig into the nighttime sky at that point because of that extended aperture. Now, just real quick, let's take a look at the math on this one. When you're comparing the 80 to the 72, you're talking about a 24% brighter image as well. So you are getting a little bit more light gathering capability on this telescope. So the 80 does show more than the 72 will because of that larger aperture there. All right. Now, the 80's got some accessories too. It does have a matched reducer corrector on it, so you can speed that up to, I believe, f6.3. Let me just do that. Yep, f6.375 is what the reducer will drop that down to. That speeds it up quite a bit, and you can get some wider field images there. It does flatten the field as well, so you get nice pinpoint stars. These are really intended for crop sensors, which are probably the most abundant size sensor and smaller, but you can finagle a full frame on there. You might need to take some you will need to take flats on that to help correct some of the vignetting. And I don't know if it's absolutely pinpoint to the edge of a full frame. It might be asking a little bit much from this corrector. But if you have a crop sensor and smaller, these are absolutely perfect. Now, if you're looking for a mount, the EQM35 does a nice job. If you're just looking for something basic, you can get some imaging done on that mount. But the HEQ5 would probably be a much more solid system to have underneath that mount, underneath that telescope, to really give you everything that you need on that as far as rigidity goes. By the time you add all your camera gear and a guide scope, maybe a filter wheel, a motor focuser, and a computer to control everything, an HEQ5 would probably be my recommendation if you're looking to image seriously with an 80ED. And then if you just want something grab and go, our AZ5 is a really nice match. It's great for terrestrial viewing. It's a pretty rigid mount for an 80. But if you're just looking to do some terrestrial work or just some grab and go, or you don't really want electronics involved, you want something clean and simple, an AZ5 would be a nice pairing for the 80ED. So my recommendations there. Moving on up the list, we've got the 100. The 100's a really unique scope by today's standards. Everything nowadays is all about being as fast as possible, and the 100 takes a completely different turn at that. So it is a 100 ED doublet, but it's an F9. It actually, by today's standards, we could probably easily make an F7.5. Maybe we will one day, I don't know. But this one being F9 really kind of pays homage to the old school type of refractors out there where you have that longer focal length, that real sharp contrasty view. And then of course, being that this is an ED doublet, there's no color on this telescope at all. So if you really like double stars or planets, or you want to start getting something that can do some deep sky viewing and still give you some aperture, the 100 is a really nice mix. And it is quite a noticeable jump over the 80, because now you're talking about a 56% jump in light gathering power. So it's, a much brighter image in the 100 ED. But now you're getting that 900 millimeter focal length, so that image scale is getting bigger there. So, if you're looking for a lightweight system to observe the moon or the planets, or if you get out to dark sky sight and you want to do some higher power work and still have that wide field, this will still give you about a 3-degree field of view with a fairly low power eyepiece. I've seen the Veil Nebula and the North American Nebula in these telescopes. And the fact that it weighs, nothing is really nice. So you don't need a big mount, but it's a serious refractor. When you get up to a 4-inch refractor, that's a pretty serious instrument, especially when you're talking about a 4-inch apo refractor. That's where I feel like you're really starting to dig into um, the nighttime sky. And if you're really interested in refractors, that 4-inch aperture is going to be quite noticeable over an 80. Now it is longer than the 80, but it really doesn't weigh a whole lot more than the 80 does. So it's actually quite a nice telescope. And of course, like the 80, it is paired with everything you need. You got mounting rings, dovetail, travel case, which is actually really nice to have. 8x50 finder, 2-inch dielectric, and then we give you a 25 and a 5 millimeter long eye relief eyepieces in the case there. So you're pretty much ready to go out of the box. And then you can add your favorite accessories to that down the road. But this is actually quite a nice telescope for viewing just about anything. And it's something that your family and friends could be impressed with because it actually looks like a real telescope at that point. And then that 4-inch aperture is really going to allow you to start digging into the nighttime sky more. And then, of course, if you're interested in doing like lunar or solar observing with the correct filters, this is also an excellent telescope to pair that with. Now, we make accessories just like the rest of them. We have the 100 ED reducer. It's a 0.85x reducer, so that brings you down to f7.5 for imaging, which is pretty nice. So you're about 750 millimeters for focal length. I've seen some really impressive images come from these telescopes. I didn't have any that I could find right off the bat for the presentation today, but very nice galaxy images. Some of our customers have sent that and shown us at shows. It's a nice telescope to work with. For visual work, you could put this on an EQM35. It is a little long, and we don't have a pure extension currently for this. So if you're looking up at zenith, like high up in the sky there, you might be, pretty low to the legs down here for the tube. The HEQ5, if you want to do imaging, or even the EQ6R with a pure extension would be a nice complement. It would be way over mounted on an EQ6R, but it would be solid for imaging on that. The HEQ5 would also work as well. And then if you want to do terrestrial work, the AZ5 is another really nice mount for that. If you just want to pop out in the backyard and view and you don't want any electronics to worry about, an AZ5 with a 100 ED is a pretty sweet setup. Talking maybe 20 pounds all out the door, something you could almost lift in one go. So kind of a neat pairing there, and that's the 100 ED EvoStar. Now, let's see, Dave, are the accessories and diagonal? The diagonal is the same on the Esprits. The Esprits don't come with any eyepieces, at least here in North America, but the diagonal is the same. The finder optically is the same, but the Esprit finder looks a little different and has like a higher set of rings on it on the Esprit finders, but they're very close on those. Now, the EvoStar 120. This is probably the highest regarded refractor in the EvoStar lineup. There's a lot of talk about these. There's a lot of reviews out there on the market. This is basically a 5-inch apo refractor. It's technically 4.7 inch. 130 would be 5, but if you're looking for that 5-inch aperture on an apo refractor and you don't want to spend $3,000 on one, the 120 is really going to fit that niche. This is the one that we get the most inquiries about because it really fills that spot people are looking for. This is a serious refractor, but it's not so serious that you need a ton of large equipment to support it. It's the same length as the 100 ED because they're both 900 millimeters. It's just bigger. And that extra aperture is going to actually help, especially if you're trying to get deep sky observing done. And at this point, you'd be talking about 44% more light than the 100. So it's a noticeable jump brightness wise compared to the 100 ED. You've got a lot more surface area on that objective lens. Photographically, it's f7.5, so it's going to be faster. So those images are going to be shorter. It does have the same 2-inch dual speed Crayford focuser, and it's just shy of 14 pounds with all of its accessories. So if you have like a HEQ5 or an EQ6R or an AVX from Celestron or one of their C-Gems, and you want like a true apo refractor to add to your lineup, the 120 is probably the one we recommend the most because it's not much heavier than the 100. It's not any bigger lengthwise than the 100 is, but it gives you a lot more punch. So it's a serious refractor. They are impressive. They're not very big to lug around, so you're not really asking a whole lot from travel purposes. I mean, it's not carry-on like the 80 and the 72s, but if you can move a 100 and you have the space for the 100, you can move a 120 because it's the same length. It's just a larger diameter. But this is the one you hear about the most just because it hits that sweet spot, that right about 5-inch aperture. You can do a lot with this telescope. I've seen really impressive details on the Whirlpool Galaxy with these from a dark sky site. You can get just about the entire Veil Nebula and North American Nebula if you've got like a 35, 40 millimeter eyepiece, put an O3 filter on it. It's a really impressive Milky Way sweeping scope like this time of year as all those cool objects in Cygnus, Scorpio, and Sagittarius are rising and you're in a dark sky site. Put a big low power eyepiece in there and just pan through those areas. And you're getting needle sharp pinpoints on stars, and they're all well color corrected as well because it is that 120 objective. The engineers that designed this spent a lot of time perfecting the optics on this. These have been compared to similar priced triplet refractors, and these actually have done better as far as their color correction goes. So there's been a lot of engineering in the objective lens that's on this telescope, as well as the other Evo stars. But at the time, the 120 was quite a feat that they were able to produce such a color-corrected ED doublet. And there's not a lot of similar telescopes on the market at the moment. You'd have to step up to a triplet if you want similar or better color correction, which is going to be more weight on your system. But we also equip it with everything you're going to need. Comes with the V-style mounting plate, the mounting rings, the travel case, the 50 millimeter finder, 2-inch dielectric diagonal, and a 25 and 5 millimeter long eye relief eyepieces. So this thing is ready to go onto your mount the minute you get it. So this, you're gonna be hard pressed to find something that will equal what the 120s can do right off the bat. We do make a matched corrector reducer for it. This drops it to f6.3. So if you're imaging or interested in imaging and you're looking at the 100, I would seriously take a look at the 120 because you're talking the same image scale. Natively, they're 900 millimeter. Reduced, they're right about 750 millimeter focal lengths. Let me make sure we're... Whoops. Yeah, so 120. Yeah, so they're both going to be similar focal lengths. So your image scale is going to be the same, but because you're now running a 120 at 750 millimeters, you're now running the 120 at f6.3. The 100 reduced would be 7.5. Your exposures on a 120 with the reducer are going to be a bit faster. So that means you don't have to shoot as long, or if you do shoot longer, you're going to get more signal on your image than you would in the 100 with the reducer because you have all that extra aperture up front there backing you up. Now, if you want to do visual, I would recommend an HEQ5 minimum for one of these. An AVX from Celestron would also be nice. I have a good friend of mine who has one on an AVX. It's a nice pairing because it really doesn't weigh a whole lot. But if you're serious about imaging, I'd probably recommend an EQ6R at this point. This is getting a little bit long. They're about 3 feet long-ish in that ballpark. So it's not so much about the weight when it comes to refractors, it's the moment arm. How long the tube is going to put a lot more strain on the mount. So when the mount's moving, it has to have more torque to move those long tubes around. So, you have a heavier objective lens up in the front too, so you want to be aware of that. So stepping up to a larger mount, if you want to do imaging, I'd probably say something around the EQ6R, something similar would be a nice pairing for the 120 if you're looking at doing that imaging wise. Or if you want to have the hybrid, we have the AZ EQ6, which you can also utilize. They both have that 44-pound payload capacity, so that would be a nice pairing for the 120 if you're looking for something, or something in that category. The CGEM, Losmandy G811 would be fine. So there's a wide variety of mounts out there that these would work on. And because they're only 14 pounds, you're not asking a lot from it. But by the time you throw your imaging gear on there, you're looking at probably about 20 pounds for a fully equipped 120 that's decked out with all the imaging gear that you'd want on it. So just keep that in mind. Now, the 120 was introduced long time ago, probably over 15 years ago at this point. But for years, we have been asked to do something bigger. And I remember going to NEAF and all these trade shows over and over again. When are you going to make a bigger one? When are you going to make a bigger one? And the 120 was always a real sweet scope, but everybody always wants to go bigger. So a couple years ago, we finally were able to get the EvoStar 150 made. This took quite a while, about 3 or 4 years of work for them at the factory and the engineering team to finally make this one a reality. But they did finally make it. They've been out a few years now they've been becoming pretty popular. They are a big telescope, so but it is a doublet. This one's longer. It's f8. With a doublet, like I said earlier, you're going to need a longer focal length to get that color correction on this. These are 1200 millimeters. So they are going to be longer than the other ones. And they are quite a bit bigger than the 120s. So when you're looking at one of these or you're considering a 150, you're going to need a mount that's going to really be matched with this. So it's a big telescope. It doesn't weigh as much as you'd think. And we make 2 versions of the EvoStar 150. This is the base model. Has a 2-inch dual-speed Crayford focuser, the same one that's found on the 120. This one weighs about 21 pounds, just shy of 21 pounds. But we do not include any of the major accessories. We give you a mounting ring, or mounting rings, V-style dovetail plate, and a travel case. So the fact that you get all that is pretty nice. But generally, if you're going to be spending $2,000-$3,000 on a refractor, especially like a 6-inch APO refractor, at that point, we figure you're going to have some accessories laying around for it. So this would be something, if you're looking for a real serious refractor, this would be one to definitely take a look at. And you can always check what the prices are with your local dealer on those. But it is noticeable from a 120. You're talking 71% more light than a 120. So visual, your reach with these is a lot deeper than the 120 is going to give you. So that 6-inch aperture is a pretty serious thing to work with. And these are big telescopes. They're really impressive telescopes to work with. Now, we don't have a 100% matched reducer for this model. We do use the 120 0.85x reducer in testing, and that worked really well. So well that there really wasn't a need to make a dedicated version at the moment for this model. But this works really well. It brings you down to, let me do this real quick, f6.8. So 150 millimeter f6.8 does a real nice job on it. If you want to do pretty much anything with one of these, an EQ6R or a similar class of mount is going to be bare minimum. Like I said, it's not so much the weight, it's only 20 pounds, but you have a very long tube to work with on these. And let me look up the length on the tube. I don't have it. These are 50 inches long when you get them. So that's a fair amount of mass that your mount's going to have to move. So make sure you have a large enough mount that's going to have enough torque to move that refractor around. Now you can also put it on an AZ EQ6. I'd still recommend using our Pure extension if you need one to lift it up. A Losmandy G11 with their Pure extension is perfect. I've had one on there before, and it was like a match made in heaven on that mount. But you're gonna want something with that 40 plus pound payload capacity to handle the 150. It's a big, long telescope to work with, but the views I think you'll be quite impressed with when you get that out to a dark sky site. The planets are phenomenal in them. Ice caps on Mars, dark detail when that's around, the red spot on Jupiter, and a bunch of little knots and details in Jupiter's bands. And when the seeing is good, these refractors will really kill it at that point. Now, we do make a upgraded version of that. This is called the 150 EvoStar DX. And the DX is the same optics as the 150 standard version. We just upgraded the, again, it's all same f8, 1200 millimeter. This has the Esprit 3.4 inch dual speed rack and pinion focuser on it though. So it is equipped for imaging, and we're going to talk about there in a minute. It is about 21, 22 pounds roughly, and these come with the larger Esprit style rings and the D style dovetail plate on it. So it's a lot more rigid of a system on there. So it's definitely something to think about. I know other people have gotten the 150 ED model and just upgraded the focuser to something like Moonlight. Moonlight has just recently stated they're not making manual focusers. They're going to just focus on, no pun intended, motorized imaging focusers. So if you want something that's got a bigger, beefier focuser on that, without having to do a third-party option, because that option might not be there, unfortunately, the 150 DX comes with that big 3.4 inch Esprit style focuser, which is awesome. Now, that's actually going to open up a new avenue, which we didn't have at the time. Let me dig this out real quick. Earlier this year, we introduced a new set of reducers, the 0.77 reducers. Two of them are made for the Esprit 120 and 150. And if I can get this thing out of the box, we also make a dedicated version for the 150 EvoStar now. So if you've got a DX version, we now make a DX reducer. This is where that bigger focuser is going to come in handy because it mounts with this knurled ring right here. There's big threads inside of there that you can actually mount to the focuser now. And unlike our smaller 0.85x reducers that are really designed for crop sensors, these big correctors are designed for more full frame, and this is also a faster reducer. This goes, the 0.85x reducer reduces you down to 6.8, and one of these 0.77s will actually reduce you down to f6.2, and will give you the ability to have full frame capability as well. These are a lot bigger correctors, about 3 inches almost in diameter, big 3-element correctors in there. So these are available now, and you can actually put a filter inside of here, there's a filter cavity. If we take this back part out, right in there, there is a little filter cavity that you can mount 2-inch filters in there. These are very similar to the Esprit 120 and 150 reducers. It's just a lot bigger optically for the EvoStar 150DX. So a very cool option to have if you want to get into imaging. I would definitely recommend the 150DX model, because now that we have the large reducer, you can make that telescope really act like a large astrograph refractor, which is quite an impressive system to work with. If you are going to be using this for imaging, like I said, I would recommend, just like the other version, the EQ6R minimum. You could actually make this on an AZ EQ6 as well, which would be kind of neat, but you are going to need the pure extensions. Like I said, I would recommend something like a Losmati G11 if you're looking for something a little beefier, but you want something that's going to be tall enough to handle the refractor in general, because it's a 50-inch long tube. So that's kind of it for the telescopes themselves, but some kind of cool new accessories that we've come out with for the EvoStar series. Now, some other stuff that we've got coming, actually not even that we already have. Let me get my demo stuff here real quick, because this one's actually important. I think it's important. This is a new accessory that we came out with. This is the EvoStar rotator adapter. So for a long time, if I can get this off, I'll show you guys. There we go. We've offered our 0.85x reducers for a while, for the 80, the 100, the 120. Those have been out for a while, but one of the issues, a couple of the issues is that when you have one of these focusers, you take off the back visual ring here, and then you get your reducer, and that threads on to the draw tube, when I can do that. And that's pretty much it. There's no way to put a filter on there. There's no way to, you could rotate it this way and then lock it in place with this ring, but there's no nice way to really get a filter in there. There's no nice way to orient your camera. It kind of left a lot to be desired for a long time. So we finally came out with this, very similar to the 72. We have this new version. This is the EvoStar rotator adapter. They're like 25 bucks. But what's nice about these is they thread on and they replace the visual back. Nice and snug. And then your corrector goes on there. So that's nice and snug. And then at this point, you can loosen these 3 silver screws, and now you can rotate and adjust. You have a rotator now for your setup. And then there is a dovetail in here, so when you're done, you tighten these screws down and it self-centers once again. Another interesting fact, this is on the 72 and the this version, is they do have filter threads inside. Now, what happens here is the engineers were really crafty on this. If you were to remove all 3 screws there, you might be worried, okay, well then my multi-$1,000 camera is going to drop. It will be loose, but it will not drop. Even though if the screws come out, your equipment is safe from dropping out until you pull down and then you start to unthread it. So there's a set of captive mounting threads in there that'll prevent anything from falling out. You actually have to pull down to release that. But the other reason that you would pull this apart, accessing the internal threads there, is you can now get one of your favorite light pollution filters. You can thread that right to the end there. There you go. Threads right inside. Get your focuser again. Pop that back up in there. This should thread back in place. Just thread that up in there. Probably easier not to do it against gravity. There we go. Thread that back up. So now it's captive again. and then we can tighten our 3 screws. And now, not only do you have a rotator, where you can rotate your hardware, but now you actually have a way to put your filter. You can see it down in there. You have a way to put a filter in the optical system rather than having to. There was really no option if you were using a DSLR with these. This now gives you the ability to put like a light pollution filter in front of the path there, instead of having to worry about clip filters or something like that. So that gives you an option now to put filters in there, and it gives you the ability to rotate your field. And this one's compatible with the 80, 100, 120, and the standard 150 Evo Stars. And it's just an accessory that you can add at any time. So kind of a cool little thing. Now, if you're looking for a lot faster reducer, our friends at Starizona make the Apex series. These do work on the Evo Stars. You want to pay attention to what focal length you're shooting at, because that will depend if you need the S for short, which is good up from 3 to 500 millimeters, which would probably only be the 72 would use the short. And then the L version or long is 500 plus. So if you're going to be using the 80 on up, you'd be using the Apex L. These are an ED-based corrector. They are 0.65x, so they are really fast. So this really speeds things up. 72, you're looking at f3.7. 80, you're looking at 4.8. 100 is 5.8. 120 is 4.8. And the 150 is 5.2. It's a really impressive corrector. And you can speak to Starizona if you're looking at one of those. They also work on the Esprit refractors as well if you're looking for something that's real fast to speed up your telescope. So give them a call. Now we have the Starizona MicroTouch focuser. This motor is able to motorize the focuser on any of the Evo Star series, the 72 all the way up to the 150DX. This motor will work on all of those dual speed versions, and you can just control, if you're doing remote imaging or just imaging in general, you can use one of these motors and their controller to motorize the focuser. I know there's other focusers out there like the ZWO EAF. We just got a sample of one of those. It should work just fine. I just haven't had a chance to really test how it all goes together. So those are also an option. And then if you have the 150DX version, you can actually use the Optec SWX30 motor. I think this is one of the best motors on the market. It's got a 2.2 micron step size. What's interesting about these is you can actually rotate the housing and disengage it, so you can still use the dual speed side manually without having to remove anything. And this goes on the coarse side of the focuser because it's a direct drive. It's not using the planetary bearing assemblies at all. It's going right to the axle of the focuser. So we use this on a lot of our Esprits. It does work on the Esprit refractor focusers. You can talk to Optec about that. But the SWX version doesn't have a motor controller either. So you just plug the power cable and the USB in, and all the brains are in the motor controller housing right here. So it's real clean, and you don't have any extra control boxes floating around. But these are tremendously accurate focusers with a 2.2 micron step size. And the fact that you can still use the focuser natively with the dual speed without having to remove anything is perfect. So that is the SWX30 model, and that works on the 150DX focuser, and of course the Esprit 100, 120, and 150. And I think they still make the version, there's a SW25 that works on the Esprit 80 if you're looking for something like that. But that's about it. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Just a couple quick announcements. Like I said earlier, I've been doing the Grand Canyon Virtual Star Party this year because it is taking place virtually. We've been doing live streams off of an Esprit 150. If you're interested in joining us tonight, I will be hosting tonight and tomorrow, the last 2 nights of this event, 9 p.m. Pacific, at the Grand Canyon National Park, and of course Focus Astronomy, my outreach program's Facebook page. Maybe we'll even stream it on the Skywatcher page. It's using Skywatcher gear. We'll look into that, but that is this evening at 9 p.m. Pacific. If you want to join me as we kind of dive into the nighttime sky, and we'll be live streaming using an Esprit 150 from a very dark sky, and it'll be quite cool. So we'll be able to show you guys all kinds of cool stuff. So that's tonight and tomorrow night, if you want to join me live for that. And then next weekend, we're going to be talking about modified cameras. So modified DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. What's the advantage of it? That should be a pretty interesting episode. So feel free to join us then. Be happy to go over any of that with you guys as well. So that should be a very cool episode. So that's next Friday's episode. Now, that pretty much wraps up today's episode on the EvoStars. Hopefully it was informative and fun for you guys. I know there's a couple questions. Dave had a question about the EvoStars being back ordered. A lot of our equipment right now is back ordered. And it's not that we're not getting anything. We're getting stuff all the time. It's just everything is sold out before it even gets to us. So it's not a bad problem per se to have. But if you're looking for a telescope, I can understand that would make it difficult. Right now, if you want to know kind of where things are at, it's kind of a complex question because there's a lot of information we need to look into. I would recommend just emailing support@skywatcherusa.com if you want to know about any back order information. Right now, probably the best thing to do is just check with your dealer of choice and see if they might have one available. So check with them. And if not, and you're willing to wait, which is really kind of the only option right now, is just wait until, place the order and just wait until your shipment comes in. Right now, it's really just about being patient. And that's kind of with everything right now, except the Evo Guide 50s. I actually have them in stock. Go to the website right now and buy one if you wanted to. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at with inventory right now. It's kind of a mess, but stuff is coming in. It's not that it's not getting produced. But it's just something you got to kind of keep an eye out for, and just be patient about. I know it's kind of not really awesome at the moment if you're trying to get something quick, but that's kind of the state of the industry as it is right now. But if you have any questions, you can always email us at support@skywatcherusa.com. I don't really see any other questions there, so unless you have something you want to slide in really quick, that was pretty much it for this week. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Next week, again, we're talking about modified cameras. We think that'll be pretty popular with a lot of people. We'll be talking about like the Canon EOS RA, the 60 DAs, and then what it really means to get your camera modified, because there's a lot of confusion about what it does. But we're going to be talking about that. The pluses and minuses of all that, that'll be next week. And then, of course, at the end of the month, it is a recorded episode, but we have Brother Guy, who's the head of the Vatican Observatory. He will be on our special guest slot at the end of the month. Anthony's got a question. Have you done a show on your Dobsonian SynScan reflectors? I don't remember if we have or not. I thought we did one on the Dobbs, but I don't know if it was the go-to. I'll have to look into that. That's actually a good one to look into. So we'll take a look at that if we haven't done so already. So thanks for mentioning that. That's actually something we'll take a look into. All right, guys. If you like what you see here, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It just keeps you informed on what's going on. We really appreciate it. And of course, we will see you guys next Friday. So it's New Moon weekend. If it's clear, go out and do some observing, do some imaging. Now is the time to get all those cool objects that are rising. We've been doing a ton of imaging this week, so hopefully you guys can get out and do some cool viewing this weekend as well. So other than that, clear skies, everyone. Thanks for coming, and we'll be talking to you next Friday. So have a good weekend, everyone. Take care. See ya.